Welcome to Undrafted Hockey Fan. I am Brad. Today we got a special guest, Tony Wolak. I'm excited to see. I'm excited to have you here because I've been reading your articles for a while on Twitter. I know we connected on Twitter back in September. I'm glad we finally got together and everything. Got a new article out and your newer podcast. You guys got like 15 episodes out, I think, so far.
Yeah, we started. Let's see. A little before the season. Episode 26 just dropped.
Oh wow!
Today, Friday morning. So it's been going pretty well so far.
Love that, man. It's exciting. So it's a flying octopus, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, myself, Devin Little, Evan Saber, and we came together and then decided to do it ourselves. And so with the flying octopus was born, and here we are.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've been following you and Devin for quite a bit. So you guys are very active on Twitter. When I started jumping into the Twitter sphere and everything, it really helped out. I was like, you guys are a great asset because I could finally read some stuff and just instead of people just crap posting, you guys actually had some substance in, which I really appreciate. So
yeah, of course, that's the goal. A little analysis here and there,
Absolutely. So if you want to check out, make sure you go on the hockeywriters.com. Tony's got plenty of articles and everything. But let's jump into your article that you just put out recently called Exploring the Red Wings Trades and quote almost trades at the 2025 deadline. So I guess given a grade, what would you say? How do you feel about what Yzerman did and how he approached the deadline?
It was pretty interesting to see the other trades that took place on the deadline day and the days leading up to it, because there weren't too many that I would have wanted the Red Wings to make. I mean, part of it is just the position they're in, fighting for a playoff spot, but kind of being on the outside. Mm-hmm. Part of it being the teams that acquired players for their own playoff run. They gave up a lot, and especially when it comes to draft picks. I know not all draft classes are considered equal, and not all draft picks are considered equal. Like all first rounders are considered equal, but I understand why the Red Wings didn't want to get into a bidding war. They still need to hoard those high quality assets, and when it was all said and done, they held on to their first rounder, their second rounder, their top prospects. You kind of walk away happy there because you're not mortgaging the future to achieve some short-term goal, which would be making the playoffs this year. So I was happy. They didn't do anything risky. I don't think they're in a position to do that right now. I like the fact that they brought back Petr Mrazek, just because their goaltending's been a little rough lately. And I do think stylistically he fits the team pretty well. One thing that Devin and I talked about on our latest episode was that Mrazek has this, he still has those quick twitch reflexes. And for a team that can be a little scrambling the defensive end, that's a good thing. He's like, he fights for every puck and he'll make saves that he has no business making. Whereas Talbot and Lyon, they don't have the best lateral movement, the best, crease management. So I do think, again, stylistically, he fits with this team where they're at right now. And he does, give them some stability going into next season, because with Talbot under contract and Sebastian Cossa pushing for NHL time, I think that's a good competition. Like every other Red Wings prospect, Cossa needs to earn his starts.
Absolutely.
Spot, and he'll, get the chance to do that. And if he does push out Mrazek or Cam Talbot next season, well, they have 1 year left on their contract, so you can move them pretty easily, or waive them for that matter. So it's not a big deal. And just kind of circling back to the rest of the Red Wings deadline moves, Craig Smith was a nice pickup. He's had some sneaky good metrics this season, and I do think he brings the effort and a little bit of physicality, and just he fits in well with what the Red Wings are trying to do in their bottom six. So I'm curious to see how that pans out for the rest of the season. But I've liked what I've seen so far. And then as far as Joe Veleno goes, I get it. He can be a fan favorite, but at this point, he's part of the 2018 draft class. That's the last one that Ken Holland presided over. it didn't look like he was going to be evolving much beyond a fourth line center. And the Red Wings just gave him a fresh start somewhere else where he could, possibly grow. But all in all, it's just like it's a minor trade. It's a change of scenery trade pretty much for Mrazek for Veleno with Smith thrown in. So hard to argue against that. And then for doing anything more, they weren't in the position to do it. So I don't mind that.
Well, I think it goes back to they didn't earn it, in my opinion. I think that at one point they did. We saw a great couple of 7-game winning streaks, and maybe it felt like they earned it back then. But coming up to the trade deadline, they had like 3 or 4 losses in a row, and then we saw that it's continued, right? And fortunately, we saw a phenomenal effort out of them against the Senators, and we saw a phenomenal, great game against Buffalo, putting up a touchdown. And to me, it felt like Yzerman's like, hey, why would I reward this? You guys. To be frank, they did not look good at the start with Lalone. They saw the change and they were super hot, which is kind of what you expect out of Lalone or out of a new coach bump and everything. But that was definitely it went a little longer than I think they anticipated, which is not complaining at all. Right, one of the best records in the league at that during the McClellan time. We've seen a huge fall off, and we see teams get hot. We saw the Senators are looking really good. The Jackets, I mean, they took our lunch in those 2 games, especially in the Stadium Series game. I mean, that was unfortunate, but they still lost. I think it was like 5-3. So you're just, there's some holes here, and I think to me, I'm really starting to see that Yzerman. Everyone's like Yzerman needs to be fired, and I'm kind of like, what are we doing here? No, because Yzerman's plan is just starting. We're just now seeing guys that he's drafted and developed and matured that are starting to come up, right? We finally saw Elmer Soderblom really earn his spot up here. We saw an Albert Johansson. You move on, clearly 7th D was not working out for him. Move on to the right side and put him on second pair, and you ask a lot of him, he's going to take a lot more, and it's working out really well. And we're starting to really see these things come together. So, go ahead.
No, like the thing is, like the Red Wings, like the last few games leading up to the trade deadline, like they lost, but there was a lot of good efforts in there. Like you said, the Ottawa game, they dominated possession, but just you give up a really bad goal. The first one where Talbot was completely out of position, and a puck he should have stopped, and then a complete defensive breakdown on the second goal for the game winner, and you can't fault the Red Wings for not being able to beat Linus Ullmark. He was outstanding that game.
Phenomenal.
And, the Stadium Series game, I'll push back a little bit and say that the Red Wings had really great effort there. They just got out-goalied. Like Merzlikins had a fantastic game for Columbus, and Talbot unfortunately did not for the Red Wings. And that kind of goes back to why you're bringing in Mrazek. It's, the goalies are not the goalies aren't stealing games, and the defense is going to be a little leaky in front of them. You hope that they can compensate for that, but they just hadn't, especially as of late. So that's why you had to go out and make a deal.
Yeah, no, I think looking at the goalie market, what was available, I mean, the hottest up and coming free agent goaltender was Adin Hill, who did sign this today at $6.25 million. And he's 28 years old. He's a Stanley Cup winner. And he didn't even hit the market, but is that someone that, Yzerman was willing to go after? And maybe, but I think that's one of the things is that us as Red Wings are like, Red Wings fans, we'll get a goalie it'll be Sebastian Cossa, or we'll get a goalie in the offseason. And I'm like, I think it's putting the expectations on Cossa to be like, okay, now you're our 1B. You're going to play 40 games. Like, that is so much pressure to put on a young rookie goalie to try and step in that position. And to me, I think I agree with you guys to earn a spot. And I'm okay with Red Wings running 3 goalies, giving 30 games to Talbot, 30 games to Mrazek, give 20 or so games to Cossa. And unless he grabs more, then that's okay. But he needs to slow grow into this. The game's faster. The game's more intense. Even in his relief, he still had a couple in, but I think he walked out with like an 880 or 860 in his game. So still not what we want to see. But again, it's first game. That's the point of this, right? Is the slow roll. And so I think I agree with the trades. I'm okay with moving out Joe Veleno. My wife is upset because he's like, it's Alex Lyon and Joe Veleno. They're so hot. And I'm like, I know, honey. I'm sorry. They traded him, you know? But no, so I'm glad he gets an opportunity somewhere else. I was kind of over the, you know, I was like, okay, move on from him, move him out. I'm okay with it. It's not a huge asset loss. Again, it's a fourth liner. He kind of just, I mean, he kind of topped out at what he was. I thought Craig Smith was a good pickup because you lost Andrew Kopp with his injury. And again, Mrazek, you got him for next year. That is huge. That is hugely beneficial. Pretty relatively low cap it. And really, when you're swapping out you have to pay Veleno again next year as well. You're basically getting Mrazek at like a $2 million extra, you know, cap it. So this isn't a huge, you know, it's not the big movers and shakers. I will say I am a little, I mean, we saw him also do the 4th round pick. How do you feel about him helping a divisional rival? Do you think it makes any difference? Some people are upset about that. Do you think it makes any difference how getting that, or are you just saying, hey, the pick's great?
I think you just take the pick and move on because, like, it's not like the Red Wings are battling Tampa Bay for a playoff spot. Tampa Bay is solidly in, and the only way the Red Wings would face there, you know, there needs to be a lot of things going right for the Red Wings to have to face the Lightning in the playoffs at some point this season. So, I don't hate it. You weren't going to use the cap space anyway, so might as well just sell it off and get a 4th round pick for it, and you can do whatever you want with that. So it doesn't really, at least to me, it doesn't really matter if it's a divisional rival. You saw Boston trading with Toronto. You saw like Pittsburgh trading with Washington. Like, I think we need to, you know, accept that in division trades are going to happen, and it's not just like it's not like a cutthroat environment, like, you know, like it is on the ice sometimes.
Well, I think you mentioned that was a good point. You're like, we're not fighting with Tampa, right? Pittsburgh and Washington are not in the same level, right? And even so, I mean, we did see a relatively big trade within the division. We saw Ottawa and Buffalo trade with Cousins and Norris. You know, that's pretty substantial, right? You know, Buffalo's going to be seeing Cousins for the, you know, because they're basically in a similar, well, they were in the same spot. They're supposed to be in the same spot in the rebuild. Buffalo kind of went down from there, but again, they are both coming out of the rebuilds, you know, and so they're going to be seeing each other a lot, and so hopefully, I mean, that's a move they made, and that's their choice, and you know, they just got to move forward with that. And another thing I wanted to mention is we talked about Boston and Toronto trade. You did also mention the Brandon Carlo trade as well, and that the almost trade that almost happened. So, what are your thoughts on that? And what do you think the price would have been if Red Wings were to try and trade for Carlo in this case?
Yeah, I got a text from a source that, you know, mentioned the Red Wings were in on Carlo when I was actually in Columbus for the Stadium Series, and it was interesting. It kind of caught me off guard a little bit because while I know there's a definite hole, like in the middle pair, I guess you want to call it top 4, I didn't think, you know, Brandon Carlo would be the guy they go after, and like there's some pros and cons there, but still solid defenseman, better than what the Red Wings currently have. But from what I heard, it was much less than, maybe not much less. It was less than what Toronto ended up paying for him.
Sure. Yeah.
So I guess what it sounded like, you know, the Red Wings thought they had a deal in place. Boston had, you know, got cold feet and said, nah, we'll hold out for a better deal. And Toronto, you know, pushed their chips in, and Detroit didn't want to match, and it's perfectly fine. You know, there are a handful of solid defensemen hitting the free agent market this summer. Hopefully the Red Wings can get one of them. My hope is Vladislav Gavrikov from Los Angeles. He's my sneak peek #1 target for free agents this summer. But yeah, they do need to address the top 4 and bring in at least at minimum one more player. But if they, you know, got 2 new top 4 defensemen this summer, I don't think anyone would complain about that.
No, I mean, and you also, mind you have a guy like Petrie's going to be out, right? He's probably not going to get re-signed. He's injured and everything. You get that right side. You have Albert Johansson, who has been done a fairly good job, I'd say. He's made rookie mistakes, I'm sure he'll get another contract as well. I'll be honest. When he was playing 7th defenseman, I was like, do we re-sign this guy? But now seeing him step up, I was like, I'm honestly super impressed. But again, you have a left-hander playing on the right side. Is it ideal? No. Is it feasible for the position that they're in? It's fine, right? I just don't think that's a good long-term plan, right? And I think getting a right-handed defenseman would be phenomenal. And I think again, Johansson stepped up, but and then you also have Justin Hall, who to be honest, that's a guy I could see Eisman buying out. I mean, Gustafsson is another one. I haven't cared for his production, but he can be a fine seventh defenseman. And so there's a couple. Those are the ones that I'm kind of like, okay, we need to kind of bring these up. So have you got any other comments on that? Because I have another question for you.
I do think the Red Wings explored, what to do with those two defensemen. But I don't think they're in a position anymore where they're wanting to give away assets to move someone. If there's an opportunity and a buyout makes sense and you're going to use that cap space for something else, I think you explore that over the summer. But the Red Wings, for just their defensive depth needs to improve. And you can do so by just slotting players in correctly. And Gustafsson and Justin Hall are not everyday defensemen at this point.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Well, and mind you, I think buyout is one of the reasons people are hesitant to buyouts because there's cap space for a guy who's not playing on your team, right? And so with a deal like that, if you buy out Gustafsson or Hall, they're going to be on your team. Will be on your salary cap for the next 2 years because they have a year left. So you have to consider what that looks like now. And looking at the cap space a little bit, I'm curious on this. Edmonton's going to need a new contract this year. He's a RFA. So do you have any speculation? I assume it's going to be a bridge deal in this case. Do you have any speculation on what a contract for him might look like, given that the salary cap is going up?
So for Simon Edvinsson, they do have some time because
they have next year too. Never mind. I thought that's on me. I thought that. Go ahead.
So yeah, it's next summer, fortunately. So they do have some time, but it's not a bad thing to plan, in advance. So if you're buying out someone this summer, the cap hit's going to be reflected the 2025-26 season and then 26-27. And that second season there is when Edvinson's new contract would kick in. So just need to be mindful that when looking at your different options, but for, and not to speculate, but if they do want to buy out Justin Hall, the cap hit, would only be about a little over 1.1 million for the next 2 seasons. So you're saving money, a little over 2.2 million next season. The year after that, it's 1.1 million against the cap. But that's not
much at all.
That's not much at all with how much the salary cap is going up. So there is some flexibility there.
Yeah, I think we're anticipating probably. I think it's upwards of a $5 million increase going into next year, I believe.
Yeah, so next season the cap is scheduled to be 95.5 million.
Okay, awesome. We're at 89. I think point. I forget what the point is, but 89 somewhere around there. So around, like I said, about 5 million. So now, do you bring now? This is a controversy within the Red Wings. I keep seeing it. Do you bring Patrick Kane back? I mean, we just saw him put up a 5-point night, which was one of the first times since Anthony Mantha did in 2019. Like I said, I'm curious on your position on the Patrick Kane experiment and how it's gone, and if he's got any gas left in the tank for next year.
Sure. Yeah. No, I have no objections to it. I think you run it back with another 1-year deal. That's what the Red Wings did with Lidstrom way back when he was getting up there, just like go 1 year at a time, see how things are going. And based on everything I've seen this season, there's no reason to think that, there's going to be any significant drop off. I mean, Kane's been a critical player on the power play here. And that's, it's been one of Detroit's best power plays, if not the best power play in the history of their team.
Yeah.
Ranking well within the league, throughout the season. So I have no objection to running it back with him for another year and just kind of going from there.
Okay, awesome. So, and you also now I also am curious on your thoughts on. We'll wrap up in a minute, but with Vladimir Tarasenko, there was in your article you also mentioned there was talks about him being moved. Do you think that happens this offseason? And you know he's a full blown no trade or no move clause this season, and then after I think June 1st or July 1st, it goes to a 16 team no trade clause. So I was curious if that's something that you see him moved. And will they have to dump an asset with that, or do you think that should be a little bit easier and maybe you can trade off a guy that maybe that's not working in someone else's system as well?
Yeah, that kind of dates back to the report that Elliot Friedman put out about the Red Wings just engaging in talks about Tarasenko. Kind of been a little bit of a mystery, if you will, just because the Red Wings are such like a lockdown, organization. But from everything I heard, they attempted to find a new spot for Tarasenko, but just none of the situations, would have been mutually beneficial. So I don't think the Red Wings want to part with assets to move someone. I think if anything, we might be looking at another buyout candidate. But I do think they'll re-engage after the season to see like how are we feeling. Do we still want to go somewhere? See what other teams may be offering now that the season's over and we're only focused on 1 year of his contract. Maybe consider retaining salary if need be. That's just a completely different scenario than the trade deadline. And if not, then consider a buyout. But it's tough for me to imagine he'll be with the Red Wings next season for what we've heard.
Yeah. And then one last thing, we'll call it the last question. So you mentioned the Oilers in your article. There was talks about potentially offloading some salary cap. Did you have any speculation on who that contract may be or anything like that?
I want to be careful this one because I don't want to I want to keep my source, confidential, of course.
Sure.
It would not have been like being a broker like they were for the Lightning and retaining salary there. It was getting an actual player back to help the Oilers alleviate some cap space there. But it would have been someone where the cap hits more than like $1 million or $2 million. It'd be higher up. So the Oilers ended up being just fine with and placing Evander Kane on the long-term injured reserve and getting cap space from that or flexibility from that. So that's I guess what ultimately happened is they didn't need to make a move, so nothing really happened from that. But yeah, it was interesting to see that it was clear that Yzerman was pursuing all avenues at the trade deadline, like not necessarily like selling, like wholesale rebuild selling, but engaging in talks for someone like Brandon Carlo, trying to acquire assets for cap space. Just a sense of being really active to try to help the Red Wings in one way or another. And I know for those who are unhappy with with how things have been going lately, they're constant pushback as well. He's been patient. He's been risk averse. He's been whatever. And there is a lot going on behind the scenes, and they are being very good about picking their spots and not wanting to mortgage the future. So it's not that he's just sitting there with and doing nothing. It's the complete opposite. It's just being very calculated with the moves to help them grow into a contender.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so I just want to wrap this up. Tony, I really appreciate you coming on. So make sure you guys go. I'll put your article in the description as well. We'll be putting this out probably later tonight or tomorrow. And then make sure you check out Tony on thehockeywriters.com as well as the Flying Octopus podcast. Tony, anything else you want to plug? I know you're on Twitter for sure. I've seen a ton of your articles there.
For a dad with a toddler, I don't have time to do anything else to plug. I appreciate joining the show today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Like, so hopefully we'll have you on again. Like I said, I appreciate all the insight you have and everything. Hopefully I didn't grill you too hard, So but yeah, I look forward to more articles. Definitely go check out Tony, hit like, subscribe on all the stuff. And again, I appreciate you joining the show, man.
Yep. Thanks for having me, Brad.
It might not feel like it, but spring is right around the corner. You know how you can tell? Golfers are hitting the links, and we have some tournaments to talk about. And if you want to do more than just talk, put your money where your mouth is. Get in on all the tee to green action with DraftKings Sportsbook. From Thursday's opening round through the closing round Sunday, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered with tournament props, live betting, odds boost, and so much more. And if you've never bet on golf before, it's easier than you think. Just pick up something simple like a golfer to win the tourney and make your pick. It's just that easy. Now we got some tournaments coming up. We got the Puerto Rico Open, the Players Championship, the Valspar Championship, the Texas Children's Houston Open. Maybe you can bet versus Stefan Jaeger to win. Maybe a little Scotty Scheffler or a little Bryce Garnett. Whatever it is, you can get in on the action. And here's something special for first timers. New to DraftKings customers, bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit cpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boo Hill Casino and Resort. 21 plus, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. New customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. All right, we are back. And so we are talking about, we had a great interview with Tony. And Tony, I really appreciate you coming on. So thanks a lot. I want to cover real quick the Red Wings. We were just talking about the Red Wings and some of their playoff chances and everything. And to me, it's a little bit crazy. The Red Wings actually have the hardest, according to Power Rankings Guru. They have the hardest strength of schedule. And we're also seeing that with the tankathon.com as well. So looking at their playoff chances, it's looking so much harder. And basically, so I like the reason I like this one is because on Power Rankings Guru.com. The reason I like it is because it gives you your average opponent rank. So in this case, you're going to see that the average rank of the teams they're versing is almost 10. So like 9.98. And so that means that all the teams, if you average the rankings of where they sit in the, so let's say Winnipeg or Washington is number 1, right? Which Red Wings are reversing Washington. That's your 1, right? And then you also verse San Jose, that's 32. 1 plus 32 is 16 and a half. So that would be your next 2 games. If you verse those 2 opponents, you would have an average opponent ranking at 16 and a half. So just to see the giant gap that the Red Wings have in the strength schedule, it's a little bit crazy. It's a little bit daunting. It does. I mean, but based on the Red Wings were playing against the Ottawa Senators and the and last game against the Buffalo Sabres, where they put up a total touchdown, we could see them really fighting hard in this case. So I'm bullish, man. I'll be honest. I'm excited. I think this is going to be a great bit of hockey. I don't know if they have the ability to be able to step up in this case, but I'm hopeful. I'm a hopeful guy. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt because I think that they're going to be a really good team. I think they are a good team. I do actually like the move. I really like what Tony talked about in the interview. That Mrazek was a good pickup, and again, we're seeing that the goalie market for the NHL is just going to be tough. It's going to be a tough way to get. Again, I like that he also highlighted the Gavrikov stuff, but again, that's next year. This year, it's going to be tough. The Red Wings currently, if we're looking at the ESPN standings, which I of course don't have up right now, but I think to me they're still out of the playoff spot. They're out of the playoff spot, but they're not. It's not impossible to get back in. If we're looking at where they're at, they have ahead of them. They have Montreal Canadiens and New York Rangers, and Columbus currently has the second wildcard spot with 70 points in 65 games. Red Wings have 68 points in 65 games, so the same number of games played, and they're only 2 points behind. Rangers actually played 1 more game, and they're tied with the Columbus Blue Jackets with 1 more game played already. But to me, it's kind of crazy. This is crazy. So the one other thing I want to highlight. I believe it was the interview that I was hearing. It was on What Chaos. They're talking about how rare it is that teams have a negative goal differential going into the playoffs. I think it's the last like 10 years or something like that. We've had 6 teams coming into the playoffs with a negative goal differential, and the Red Wings have a negative 18, and they're also 3-6-1 in their last 10. So you have to consider that this is a tough streak that they're going through. They were on a 6-game losing streak before versus Buffalo. So it's not impossible. There's not I saw Money Puck today had a like 9.6 chance that they were going to make the playoffs. That is low. But again, to me, I've said it since the start of the year that this is let's go back to full screen in this case, because I gotta talk to y'all. So to me, this has been, I said it since the start of the year. It's okay if the Red Wings don't make the playoffs. I'll be honest. I'm your guy. I'll tell you straight. I might step on your shoe, but I'll never ruin your shine. Right. I think it's okay if the Red Wings don't make the playoffs. I think you get a mid-round draft pick. I think you need to be fighting for it for sure. Going down the stretch, they have some injuries. They lost their second line center. So you have Casper, who looked good with Patrick Kane and DeBrincat. Soderblom is breaking out really well on the top line. To me, you're starting to create some depth, right? But again, the Red Wings don't have a ton of depth. That's why they brought in Craig Smith, right? I mean, they lost Petrie. They had to move Albert Johansson over to the right side. And again, the bottom pair defensemen with Hall and Gustafson has not been working out that great this year. Could see them getting to buyout, like I talked about in the interview. As Tarasenko, I think they end up moving him. I think someone will take this contract. I think even if Red Wings retain half on it, I think I could see them taking it back because they'd rather just hold the cap space and then someone else can take the contract, right? I can see this working. I can see it working. I can see them going far this year. It's going to be close. It's going to be so close. I think I read the other day, they need to be 14-4 for the rest of the year to get 92 points, which is what they were at last year. Now, because of the fight of the standings and everything, with how many teams are really in it, this could be one of the lower points total that you need to get into the playoffs and everything. So again, going 14-4 is a daunting task, or you have to go 12-2-2, I believe it was. Either way, it's gonna be a tough sledding for the Red Wings. But I think this is good. This is meaningful hockey. We're watching meaningful hockey for the Red Wings, and we're starting to again. The city has gone through some stuff. I mean, we saw Lions. They were so bad for so long, right? Missing all those playoffs. They did a phenomenal job. Not last year because they lost in the second round, but then we saw them go all the way to the conference finals. We saw Tigers. They sold at the deadline, and then they went to the second round in the baseball. The Pistons, they're over 500 for the first time in years, and they're in a playoff spot. Red Wings are fighting for a playoff spot, and we know that the NHL is different than other leagues. In the NHL or in the NFL, you get these guys, draft these guys like Aiden Hutchinson, you draft him second overall. He's on the team next year. That doesn't happen with the Red Wings unless you're getting a lottery pick, and it's rare. I think there's been, even from the 2024 draft, or 2023 draft, I think there's been like 10 guys that play in the NHL. So you have to consider that it's rare, right? Not everyone has a Celebrini. I think the 2023 draft was 10 players. The 2024 draft was like 3 players. So it's rare. Rebuilds take a long time. We've heard this from Kenny Holland. It takes 6 to 8 years, even 10 years, he said, for a full-blown rebuild. That's been hard. I don't disagree. And Red Wings fans are tired. They're like, hey, the rebuild started when Ken Holland was here. Ken Holland did not leave the Red Wings much. I think Yzerman has done a decent job. I think he's done about a B+. I think he's a phenomenal drafter. His free agency signings are a little skeptical in this sense. But the thing is, in 2 or 3 years, when they're in their window, probably 3 years, when they're in their Stanley Cup window, it's not going to matter. The comp for contracts, the cop contracts, all these small contracts. You're like, why did they bring Jeff Petrie in? Like, what do they do? And if you're questioning any of Yzerman's moves, I think he's setting this team up for a really good shot. I think you should be very excited. I think if you're just starting to listen to this, if you're 35 minutes into a hockey podcast and you're not into hockey, I think it's gonna be so exciting for you to be getting hockey. I've been telling everybody, they're like, oh, I haven't really watched the Red Wings that much. I said, I start now. I said, this is the exciting part. This is the fighting. It's the high. It's a little bit of roller coaster, right? Because they're fighting for that playoff spot, but it's the excitement. Like again, it's exciting to be in the playoffs every year, but it's different than being. I always say this before. I'd rather Red Wings miss the next 2 years and then become Stanley Cup contenders than just be like, because guys, people are like, oh, I'll trade a first round pick, trade a second round pick for these guys. I'm like, no, don't. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? To me, I want to be good for the next 15 years. Sider is 23. That takes him until he's 38. Rame is 22. That takes him until he's 37, right? I'd rather be good for the next 10 to 15 years and going for the Stanley Cup. Then, and this is the time to do it. It's time to shed all the stuff because you're not going to get a high draft pick again. You're not going to be able to draft 9th overall or 10th overall, right? Like if you're in a playoff spot, you're going 16 plus, unless you're trading for a first round pick. But that means you're selling. So to me, it's all about the mindset of like, hey, I know it's bad now. I know it's not great. I know it's less exciting. It's less exciting than the NFL. But to me, this is the part where it's okay. It's the teardown. This is the, you watch the TikTok or the Instagram reels where the person is, they go from 100 pounds overweight and they lose 100 pounds or whatever. You know, they still have a big transformation. We're in that middle. We're right in the middle. We're on the coming out. Again, it's exciting. Again, this is an exciting time. I don't have to tell you this. Just watch hockey. You saw that Buffalo game? That's exciting. It's so exciting. You watch the Senators game. Disappointing that they lost. They got goalied, but it's exciting. This is exciting hockey. It's not. They're not getting beaten to the ground. This is the best time for hockey. We're in the golden era of hockey. So make sure to hit like and subscribe. Go follow Tony on X. Make sure to check out the writers, hockeywriters.com. Check out his articles as well, especially the Flying Octopus podcast as well. We'll put those down in the description below. Check those out. Appreciate it. Love you guys. See you in the next one. Bye.